Good. Okay, great. Great. Welcome, everybody. Thanks for coming. I'm excited to introduce Eva Lundsager, who has painted a brilliant, beautiful show titled Time is Very Quick. I'm excited that you're here with us, and I'm looking forward to learning more about these wonderful paintings. Thank you so much. I want to hand it over.
Okay. Thank you, Trini, and thank you people for being here. I'm just delighted to have this show and to be working with Talley and crew and having the opportunity to have my paintings in this really beautiful gallery. I'm standing in front of the series of 4 paintings, which I titled Here We Witness. And they started with just like a simple blue line. And before I approached the canvases, I did a lot of drawings of 4 rectangles, not touching each other, a little space between them, but doing a single line going between them. And that line is like, you know, there's just something really profound about how it talks about touch, you know, like the connection from my interior world to the hand, to the brush, to the paint, and onto the canvas. And, you know, it's like, so I started with the drawings, and then I had the 4 paintings on the walls, and, you know, I didn't like project the drawings and trace them, you know, the drawing of the line. I just approached the drawing of the painting of the line on the paintings the same way as I did the drawings. You know, just kind of very smooth and just going through it and not worrying about it being exact, because, you know, like our experience of moving through the world, you know, it's full of our foibles. It's not perfect. And then, you know, I decided, like, you know, the top half was going to be red, the bottom half was going to be blue. So we can talk about, like, you know, anytime you put a horizontal line through something, it starts to suggest a horizon line, whether it is or isn't. And, you know, I deliberately, like, didn't want to make literal blue sky, green ground. I'm always kind of playing with that. While there is that line that kind of suggests a horizon line, you know, I don't think of myself as a landscape painter, because I'm not like looking at landscape and abstracting from that. I'm really like starting with the drawing and painting processes, and then allowing the different ways of putting paint on to kind of suggest whatever it suggests, and kind of evoke things and be suggestive of images of our world. But it's not our world, it's like a different world. And then, so like, you know, the sky, quote unquote, you know, it's not like a blue sky, it's much more like, you know, a really hot, glowing space. And then the water underneath here, it's, you know, like, is it water or is it more like atmosphere? And I'm an experimental painter, so I'm always like, when I'm working, I'm thinking, like, I don't have a planned out step by step how we create this thing. I'm always like curious, like, well, what's going to happen if I do this? What's going to happen if, you know, I add more thinner and like let it run more? What's going to happen if I tilt the painting and let the paint run upwards? What happens if I use a thicker brush here? You know, just kind of curious. Like, so it's like, I'm not like following steps to make a perfect completion, but letting little turns take me where they will, as they do in our lives. And then like this kind of blue line that started these paintings. It also took me to an exhibition I saw at the Harvard Art Galleries of Edvard Munch's work that was there this last year. And, you know, his famous images of 2 people standing like on the shore looking out over water, and you see them from behind, you see their backs. And so that, the line, like in this large painting behind Anna over here, you know, that blue space on the bottom, those kind of greens and blues above that were very much evocative of the Edvard Munch works I saw. And, you know, and like looking at that space, those lines that kind of mark, that the change between, land and sea or earth and sky, but they also evoke the transitions in our lives, which kind of brings me back to these 4 paintings. They started, they kind of marked a very tumultuous time, not only in my life, but in our world. I started them when I was at the McDowell Art Residency, and towards the end of the residency, my mother, who was 99, died suddenly. So that, and then of course that's a big transition in your own life when your elders are gone and you become the elder. It's a huge change in our lives. And then, war broke out around the world. We had a tumultuous, world-changing election. Just so much happened. So that's, then one day I just thought, what are we, if not witnesses of our own interior transitions, adapting to the world without my much-loved mother, and then the transitions going on in the world around us. So we're witnesses to all of this, and we're always moving back and forth between what's going on inside us and what's going on around us, and how do we negotiate that. So I think of the images in the paintings, which come out of just like Mark's touch, different ways of touching the canvas, big brush, little brush, really liquid paint, thicker paint. So I think of them as I'm not drawing the world, abstracting from the world, but I'm building marks and shapes and images with the paint and letting them start to suggest things, but not really telling us exactly what it is. And for me, there's something, really powerful about, that thing that we all have that compels us to want to decipher meaning, find meaning in it and say what it is, but also the possibility that's inherent in not knowing exactly what it is and being able to imagine different possibilities, different outcomes, and ultimately, I love this tenuous line between knowing and not knowing. Can I say exactly what it is, or does it start to suggest something to me, and then, but not knowing too can be beautiful because there's anything is possible in not knowing. So I don't know if that made any sense at all, but if you have any questions, I'd love to answer or try to.
What's your process of choosing color? For example, many of these are complementary.
I think I do often like to put complementary colors next to each other, or colors that will really impact each other. I like that intensity, but I also can like passages I like really rich neutrals, that are made with mixing a lot of colors together. Yes, it's brown, but it's brown with a lot of color. I'm not like a painter who mixes all her colors when I start the day and gets everything planned out. I'm always, when I'm working, thinking no, I know what that needs, and going and picking another paint, another color from the table and squeezing out more paint. So
It's a little intuitive then.
it's, yeah, it is intuitive, but sometimes I think when I say something's intuitive, it just means that I haven't found the right words for it yet. So there's an impact that I'm looking for, and there's also kind of a joy in sometimes things not working beautifully together, maybe a more I don't know, harsher colors all next to each other that might not be so soothing and visually rich, but then another passage might have some a little more openness or a little more air. I think of these little blue spots that really kind of suggest what's it called? Atmospheric perspective, like something way off in the distance. And there's something so magic and compelling about that moment of like looking at, a far point in the distance, like a horizon line, if you're, like somewhere where you can see far away, or like looking out over the ocean. There's something that's just like really centering about that experience of looking far out. That kind of takes you away from yourself and connects you with the world around you. Yeah.
Talk about how, like, your approach to abstraction does exactly like what you just said as well. It kind of takes you away from yourself a little bit.
Yeah. Like, it's. I've always kind of called myself more of I've called myself an abstract painter, and even like a process painter, because it's like, I really like seeing what the medium will do and working with it in different ways, thinking about the history of painting, the different ways of putting paint on canvas. And I'm sorry, can you remind me again what you were saying?
My question was like, you just ended that last response on how it took you away from the individual and this proximity you have to a subject, for instance. And you were talking about how you started off with the horizon line and then you take it away from the horizon because you don't want it to be a specific landscape. Like that process of abstraction, how it kind of helped make the painting something outside of an individual experience. Like, you say this is inspired by Munch, and
like that one little part.
Kind of see it, but I kind of think it's a Eva Lundsager.
All the things that we look at, like I think like all of an artist's experiences end up somehow being part of their work. And like a lot of times when I'm working, there might just be like a mark I want to make. Yeah. Like when I look at the paintings over here, like there's a lot of almost like a grid, which we also see like down here, like almost like kind of like filling space with a grid, or like piles of little circles and things on top of them. And that becomes like a moment of like, once I decide to do that in an area, like, okay, now I can just maybe sit down on the floor and the painting's propped up on blocks, and just sit there and like draw these circles over and over again. And there's something, soothing about that. Like, I don't have to make decisions. I'm just going through the process, and I'm seeing as I go, like, do I need to do it from edge to edge, or do I want to go up more? So that the little decisions are made, and just kind of like following paths, following inklings, like,
Yeah, I feel like that, like what you just described, affects the perception of the color of that shape from far away. The pattern you do on top of it, make it read as a darker form or lighter form, depending on the line you address on top of it. So are they like more formal decisions that you're making in those cases to change the color, or is it more just what the painting needs? Sorry,
No, it's it's like when like me as a painter, when I'm working, like I'm not thinking in words, and a lot of times, it can be as simple as like, maybe it makes me laugh. Like sometimes I think like there's something funny about then just deciding like, okay, these two wavy lines that are on top of each other, I'm going to just fill them in, and sometimes you think you're going to continue this like all the way up, and then like you do part of it, and it's like, oh no, that's all. Like it just tells you. And I was talking kind of about humor before, that there can be something funny about like, okay, there's drips coming down, but I'm going to fill in the negative space between the drips, and then I'm just going to put dots in there, and then then those shapes start to suggest something else. So like allowing those kind of like processes of putting paint on canvas that are not based in representation, but allowing them to like kind of suggest representation. But ultimately, when you come down to it and you really look at it, it falls back to being, small brush strokes or big brush strokes or drips. It's not a representation of something, but it definitely invites an imaginative response,
Any other questions? Great. Well, thank you, everybody.
Okay.
Thank you for being here.
Thank you for listening.